Hello, everybody, and welcome to Critical Conversations of Hope. My guest today is the Speaker Emeritus for Faith for Today. He is a highly sought after speaker and co-host and all-around pastor. Not a bad musician, as on the low key, the little things that I know, little something. I'm talking about none other than Mike Tucker, and I can confess to you that he's a whole lot more comfortable doing what it is we're doing than I am, because this is what he does all day, every day. And I'm thankful for his leadership, for his mentorship, and his friendship over the years in ministry. Mike is also has a master's in counseling and has done a great deal with counseling and grief recovery and the like. And those are some of the things that we're going to get into and talk about today. Mike, welcome to CCH.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here. You said I'm not a bad musician, but I'm not a good musician either. So it's someplace in the middle.
You know,
I started college as a music major and would have completed that degree had it not been for one small detail, and that is an appalling lack of talent. Other than that, I had that degree, brother.
Well, you know, I've seen some of those that stayed in the word and they had an appalling lack of talent as well.
They finished the degree, yeah. That's true. Oh, man.
Mike, it is so good to have you on with us today.
Oh, man, it's good to be here.
How are you keeping yourself?
I'm doing all right. You know, we're all going a little stir crazy, I think, as we try to get through this crazy thing called the coronavirus pandemic. But I'm doing a lot of work from home. As you mentioned, we're doing the video conferencing. My wife Pam and I do a weekly prayer meeting for Canyon Creek Project, the church that we've helped plant.
Yeah.
We do the church services remotely like this. I'm doing some stuff for Faith for Today. We're talking about grief today, and Faith for Today, starting this Friday night, is starting a new series of Facebook Live from the Lifestyle Magazine Facebook page entitled The Grief Sessions. And we're going to do 6 weeks of this program. We've got a small group curriculum coming out. It would have been out by now had it not been for the coronavirus, but a small group curriculum that churches can use, DVD and book based. But we're going to give kind of a foretaste of that for the next 6 weeks, helping people deal with the grief they're experiencing, and which is being amplified because of the coronavirus and being stuck at home.
Yeah, you know, as we're just rolling right into that subject matter, can you talk a little bit about what you believe folks are going through? You're in it, and you don't recognize what emotions are coming over you because you're stuck with, got to make sure that when I come into the house, everything is sprayed down and taken off and washed.
Yeah.
And all those details
Yeah.
I was driving somewhere and I get on news as little as possible, just enough to survive, because too much is like salt, it'll kill you.
It will kill you. It will kill you, man.
But I was listening and they were talking about, the potential of how this could continue to go on for the next year or two if we don't. And I felt this heaviness over my, like, man, what?
Most
football? What?
Yeah, I know. That's the risk. There's nothing new to watch on sports, man.
I'm telling you. My wife was saying, you mean to tell me the only thing they can do is bring Jordan back and tell his story again?
Yeah, 20-some years ago when he quit. Come on, man.
Yeah, but there's that heaviness, and I believe there are a bunch of folks that and I think one of the things, and you can tell me if I'm right or wrong here, one of the things that makes it feel stir crazy, besides the fact that you're in the house with whoever you're in the house with, is that displacement of, I'm going to take what it is I'm feeling about all of this out on the people who are here that really didn't have anything to do with what's going on.
Yeah. Yeah, that's happening. It also happens on social media. But really what most of the world is experiencing right now is grief, because there are losses associated with this. We've lost our sense of freedom, our sense of security, our sense of self, our sense of identity. You've lost a sense of safety and normalcy. And so our reaction to that is to grieve. But even beyond that, there have been numerous deaths that have occurred where people die alone.
Yeah.
And so family members are not able to be at their side when they die, and that means a lack of closure. And you can't have a funeral.
Right.
You can't do that. And so again, that ceremony that we go through is not available to us. And so again, there's no closure, because there's no opportunity to begin to process these. And then you don't have the community of support that you would normally have, where the two of you go out, you to a coffee shop or to a restaurant,
Right.
you sit, you talk, you go for a walk together, you chat. That's not there. And so people are isolated. You're dealing with this yourself, or you're not dealing with it. And so grief has been complicated and magnified through this whole experience.
Mercy. Well, let's talk, since probably our primary folks watching this, before it gets passed on to whoever gets passed on, are people that are of faith. And I think sometimes we have this thought process that there is no grief in Christ Jesus. You know, we read that text, therefore there be no condemnation, and we put substitute condemnation, and we say, well, there should be no grief either. And so it's the joy of the Lord, and we miss some things. Can you talk a little bit about where that is? Give us some reality check and some reason to be able to breathe.
Well, you know, Apostle Paul says we grieve not as those who have no hope. Well, the truth is, he didn't say we don't grieve. We just grieve differently.
Right.
And so grief is a normal reaction. Grief is a physical, psychological, emotional, societal reaction to any experience of loss. Everyone goes through it. It is a gift of God. It is designed to help us recover and to move from point A, which is the point of loss, to point B, which would be a point of peace, and acceptance and peace, where we find a new normal. The phrase that I use here is we choose an acceptable future. And so it is the vehicle that takes us on that journey from point A to point B. Grief is. And it's necessary. It is not a sign of weakness spiritually or emotionally or physically or psychologically. If you grieve, it is a sign of being human, and it is necessary. And those that try to truncate this by not grieving actually do themselves a disservice, and it will hurt you. Long term, it will hurt you. It will destroy you.
Yeah. You know, the way I have always understood it, I think when I could finally get my head, I don't know who gave me this illustration. They were looking at it from this standpoint of men, because I think men often have a harder time with this grief process than women, just by the orientation that comes when everything that's associated with being a man is you are more manly the less emotion that it is you show. Right. Just the term man up means squash the emotions and deal with whatever that is there. So, you know, if I hit my finger with a hammer, you know, hey, are you okay? You're expecting me to say, yeah, I'll be fine. No, I'm not fine. Yeah. But that's our orientation about life. And it'll be the same if I blew a hole in my knee. I'll be fine. No, your bone is sticking out from the inside of your leg. You're not fine. But that's who we are. But one of the things they gave me as an illustration, and I'm wondering how well this bears up, is if you cut yourself and bleed, bleeding is a natural process that the body goes through to heal itself, to protect itself, to create a brand new normal and help you to get on your way. That blood keeps impurities out, it dries, and it covers over so that inside the healing can take place that's there. It would be ridiculous if you cut your hand to look at your hand and tell yourself, stop bleeding. You've bled enough. It's got a purpose, it's got a process that goes on, and your tears of emotion and grief are kind of like that for your emotional health, as it is the bleeding process is for your physical health. Is that a pretty good correlation as we go?
It is. It's a very good correlation. It's a good illustration of what it is. The truth is that grief is necessary, and men don't do well with it. We struggle more with this than women do. Women, for the most part, are more comfortable analyzing their own feelings, their own emotions, and dealing with those than men are. Men even have a smaller feeling vocabulary than women do. Women got 6 words for happy. We're just lucky to get happy out. You know, they got all kinds of words to describe variations and nuances, and we're either happy, we're sad, we're angry, or we don't know. You know, we're confused. So that's about the end of our feeling vocabulary, and we figure we can throw hungry in there too.
There we go.
As an emotion, you know. Yeah. So we don't do as well with it. And so it's even more important that a man say, all right, this is something I've got to get through. It's something that I can't avoid or escape. And the only way to get through it is indeed to go through it. We go through it by 4 activities. And basically, I try to break this down to simple. There are things you do to help you grieve, all right? And the 4 activities are think, talk, write, and cry. And the truth is that if you'll think about these things, think the thoughts fully when they come, if you'll talk about it with someone, share the stories, and really stories are the more important thing here. Telling the stories, write about it, maybe keep a diary or a journal, and cry. Don't be afraid to cry, even though that's not a very manly thing to do, we think, to go ahead and cry. If you'll do those things, the chances are you're going to grieve appropriately. Whether or not you know stages or symptoms or anything else, you do those 4 activities, you're probably going to be okay.
Wow. Think,
talk,
write, and cry.
That's right.
Awesome. That's awesome.
As you know, I lost my wife 4 years ago now.
Yeah.
And the way I got through it was, first of all, I walked. I became a grief walker. Man, I walk up to 12, 14 miles in a day. And yeah, a lot of walking, but I would use that time to think and to talk out loud, you know, and to cry and have my conversations with God as I walked. Then I kept a blog that I would post every now and then on Facebook, and it's amazing how many people read that thing. And so thinking, talking, and writing and crying, those were the things that I did, and I forced myself to do those early and intensely. Yeah. I engaged in what I've coined leaning into the pain. Our tendency is to want to run from the pain, but if you will lean into it, anticipate, this is going to hurt. It's going to hurt less if I do it now than if I do it later. Yeah. And so anticipate what's going to be difficult and do it now. You will find yourself getting better, because the rule of thumb for this, for grieving, is the sooner and the more intensely you grieve early, the shorter time it takes and the less painful it will be. The longer you put it off, the longer it will take and the harder it will be. Wow. So leaning into the pain and doing it early is usually a better way to go. And every fiber of your being cries out, no, I don't want to do that. But it is better to do it early. And if you will do that, significant progress can be made in the first 6 to 9 months. Okay. And a lot of people can make a good adjustment. I'm not going to say recovery, because in some ways you never recover. Right. But you can make a good adjustment in 9 to 12 months. and do so in a healthy fashion. Now, the average grief time is 1 to 2 years. You can grieve probably up to about 5% of the population. 5, maybe 10 will grieve up to 3 to 5 years and not be pathological with that grief.
Mm-hmm.
But most people can make significant advancement in 12 to 15 months. Let's put it that way.
Wow. Wow. Well, now I know especially some of us are trying to relate how we started and trying to get us to how that relates to the grief process we're going through with Corona, which is something for a lot of folks. As I'm clicking on this, I'm finding out, wow, I didn't realize I was going through grief as I'm dealing with that. So now that, we picked the scab off, if you will, and how do I address that, those 4 things, through the grieving process? How do I do that in a situation with where we are? How do I grieve and blog and write and especially cry over Corona isolation? What does that look like?
And again, the tears may not be as ready or as necessary for, say, a Corona grief as they would be for a personal loss grief. But certainly there's a need to give expression to your sadness. And so I think a part of it is to, first of all, identify the things that you're missing. What is it that I've lost? Is it the sense of freedom? Is it have I lost my job? Am I experiencing financial loss here? Is it the loss of contact and community that I'm grieving over? So identify what are the things that I'm missing that are affecting my life, my regular schedule, my sense of well-being, whatever it is, identify those. And then identify the emotions that are associated with those. Am I feeling at risk? Am I feeling panicked, anxiety, sadness? What is it that I'm feeling? And simply communicate that. You may do it, I think with social media is one way to do this, especially if you've got a group of friends on your social media sites, is to share with them, hey, this is what I'm going through. Anybody else doing this? And I've seen a couple of groups that are formed on social media for Corona grief, so to speak, And it's not a bad thing to read what other people are going through and to post your own. And again, there are dangers to doing that on social media because when you throw it out there, anybody can see it.
Yeah.
And when it comes to your grief, people got opinions, and opinions are like armpits. Everybody's got a couple of them, and they all stink. So don't pay too much of attention to people's opinions about your grief unless they are informed opinions, and that these people are informed. But throw it out there, and that's one place to do it. Phone calls, FaceTime with friends. Get the video conferencing going and talk honestly and openly about what's going on. This is what I'm feeling, man. I know it may seem strange, but wow, I just identified this is what's happening. And so, writing, thinking, crying, and blogging about it. But social media does provide an opportunity to share some of these things. And also with our technology, what you and I are doing right now with the Zoom, you can do that either with Zoom, you can do it with your FaceTime or other video conferencing available on smartphones, your computer, and have that opportunity then to chat face to face as it is, and be able to talk. Okay.
That sounds great. Now I'm going to ask a question that's always been, as a pastor, you got to deal with counseling, and I've had more than my fair share with that. But when it comes to the grief process, there's an area that's there that also gets associated with grief, and sometimes it gets put in as this is one of the phases of grief, but it can stand alone by itself, and that's this area of depression. And how then does depression fit in with what it is we're talking about, this journey that it is we're on? How does depression fit in with that, and does it? And is there anything different than I need to do if what is normal. Grief goes into depression, or should I just assume that that's a part of where things are?
When you look at the symptoms of depression and grief, they're almost identical. So grief by itself is depressive. And so if you're feeling depressed, that's a part of grief. The source of the depression is identifiable, therefore it's more readily and easily fixable than other types of depression. Some depression, most depression is event specific. In other words, there's something that's caused this. There's a loss, there's something that's going on in your life, there's a breakup, something of that nature. Other depression can be caused by guilt. And especially if a loss has the guilt associated with it, then the depression can be even deeper with that. But then, and then some are just chemical or genetic causes for depression. But the depression usually that comes from grief, it is common, it is noticeable, it is predictable. But the truth is that as you resolve the grief issues, the depression itself tends to go away. So when you treat the cause, the effect will tend to diminish. Yeah, the symptoms will now begin to diminish. And so again, engaging in those activities of thinking, talking, writing, crying, leaning into the pain, doing the things you know are going to be painful, but doing them on your terms at your time, rather than letting it sucker punch you, so to speak, gives you the opportunity then to deal with the source of the depression rather than treating symptoms. When you get the measles, it's not enough to put ointment on the bumps. You need to deal with the root cause of the disease. You get rid of the root cause of the virus, whatever it is, then you'll be okay. The bumps will go away,
Yeah.
And so don't treat the symptoms, treat the root cause, and that in this case is going to be the grief. And let it take care of the problem, I would say.
Okay. I'm sensing an opportunity. One of the things that I've chosen to do during this that's been very helpful for me is to see this time frame as an opportunity and not so much a liability. And I'm sensing, even as you're talking, that there are some things that people of God can do to be the other person on the other end of that call with folks as they go through what's going on. And I know that assisting others with their pain is also a way of helping to address some of the things that we're going through as well. So,
exactly.
So can you give the people of God, maybe a clarion call to, hey, everybody is, and here is where God has brought the world directly here. You don't have to go far. The person who's sacking your groceries, the person who's next door that you've lived with for 4 years, but you really have never talked unless you happen to be getting out of your car at the same time.
Right.
How do we enter in to just be a listening ear?
I think that's the key is, all right, these people, they're out there, and the truth is they're going through what you're going through, chances are, to one degree or another. So make a contact. And then when you do make the contact, ask, how you doing? And, most people, again, they'll say, I'm good. I said, no. How are you really doing? Because I tell people I'm doing fine, and the truth is I'm not. Yeah. So I got a feeling you may be something like me. And then when they start to tell you, don't fix it. Don't try to fix it. Don't try to have something magical to say. I've got a list of things that people say to someone in grief who's lost someone that are dumb things to say, and you don't realize it. He's in a better place now. God wanted another flower for his garden. Those paint an ugly picture of who God is. They're terrible.
Yeah.
I've got a book in my library entitled "Don't Ask for the Dead Man's Golf Clubs" and other stupid things people do in grief. So, just listen and don't try to fix it. Don't try to super spiritualize it with a spiritual response, because what's more important than an answer at this juncture is the journey.
Mm.
More important than answers is the journey, and having someone who just listens and empathizes is more important than actually trying to have an answer, because most of your answers, even though it sounds like great wisdom to you, will sound trite to them.
Yeah.
I tell young pastors, when you're learning how to comfort someone in pain, and especially in sorrow, show up and shut up.
Mm.
If you show up, they can't say you weren't there. If you shut up, you can't say anything incredibly stupid. So show up and shut up and nod your head, make eye contact, say, I know what I hear you. I hear you. I've got something similar going on. Or I've not been there, but man, I can't imagine, you know?
Yeah.
Those kinds of things, that is more helpful than trying to fix it with even with a passage of scripture.
Yeah.
For some people, that's helpful. For a lot of people, that's not.
Yeah.
Because it sounds like you're trying to truncate their sorrow and say, all right, come on, if you just had more faith, you'd be okay.
Yeah.
And so it's better to show up and shut up, and to listen, to empathize rather than fix, and to offer to take the journey with them.
You know,
I don't have it's to take the journey.
It's interesting. What jumps out in my mind as you're talking is Job's friends would have been perfect if they had followed that advice.
Yeah.
At the very beginning of the book, all they did was sit with him, grieve with him. It isn't until somebody gets uncomfortable with the silence and goes, that the whole mess starts falling out.
It fell apart.
And the interesting thing is, if you take it out of context, if you just take some of the advice and the perspectives that these guys have about God, they're spot on. They stand out. But it's the timing, it's where they do it, it's how they,
right.
It wasn't now. And God was like, dude, all I wanted you to, if you could have just left your mouth at home, you would not at the end need Job to pray for you.
For you, that's right. That's right.
So there's a lot that's to that. And I think sometimes we shy away from people who are in grief because I don't know what to say. And the answer is, that's right.
Yeah, you don't know what to say, and no one does. And the proper thing to say is, I got no answers. All I know is I love you, and my heart is broken with you.
Yeah.
No words. I'm here for you. Cry if you need to. I got Kleenex. I got no answers.
That's it.
I got Kleenex, man. And so do what you need to do. I'm here and you're safe.
Yeah.
If we did that, and that alone, that's what's necessary.
Yes, indeed.
And then there's a time for giving advice. And the advice that I give is, I don't know what's going to work for you. Here's what helped me. You're different than me. Your journey is different. Your experience of loss is different. I can't tell you that I know exactly what you feel, even though you lost your wife and I lost mine. Because your relationship was different. You're different. Your circumstances are different. So it's going to be different for you. But here's what helped me. Think about it. If that would help you, give it a shot. If not, throw it out the window, forget about it. And try something else. But do something healthy in order to help move your way through this thing. Show up and shut up. But then when you do give advice, I can't say what's going to work for you. I can't fix you. Your experience is different than mine, but here's what helped me.
Amen.
That's pretty safe. So
yeah, and it's consistent and it works whether you're in the church, out of the church.
Out of the church.
Doesn't matter.
Does not matter.
Those things kind of buy in.
You know what? That works not just for loss, but it works for divorce, because that's a grief experience as well.
Sure.
As a pastor, as a man pastor, you go to the hospital and you try to comfort a woman who's had a mastectomy. You think you know anything about what she's going through?
Absolutely not.
I don't. I'm not going to lie here. But, and yet we try to act like we do. No, we don't. But even then, I've had people who say, I know exactly how you feel. Do you really? And some of them have lost a spouse. All right, so you may have at least an inkling. But others is that, my cat died last week. I know exactly how you feel. No, you don't.
No, you don't.
I'm sorry, but you haven't got a clue.
No,
And the fact that you could say that tells me you have no clue.
mhm. I bet you're comfortable not having a clue.
Yeah. Yeah. So just showing up and shutting up, being a presence there, but even just making the phone call. When you call someone and say, hey, I know we're stuck. We can't get together like we usually do every week at church.
Right.
We can't go out to eat, but I'm thinking about you. Are you okay? I just want you to know I'm thinking about you and praying for you. Is there something I can pray for you about? I'm checking up on you. Yes, I am. And I want you to know that I care about you. That phone call, that text message, that email, those are pure gold. Pure gold.
And it's so simple a way of being salt and light in this world. It's a simple way of doing the work of God and being vital to people at a time when it's needed.
Mm-hmm. That's right. You look at the response first responders and healthcare people are getting when people drive by and honk and wave.
Yes.
And they're crying.
Yes.
I mean, they didn't say anything to fix the problem. They just said, I appreciate you.
Yeah.
You go. I'm here for you. We love you.
Yeah.
That kind of encouragement is golden.
Yes,
but people who try to fix me when I was in the throes of losing my wife, people who wanted to spiritualize it and give me a fix-all opinion or
just read this text 5 times, turn around,
you'll be good.
Be fine.
Yeah, that was not helpful at all.
Yeah,
even people who repeated to me things I knew to be true were not helpful. Mm-hmm. You'll see her again in the resurrection. I don't want to do that. I don't want to wait that long.
Yeah.
Sorry, that's not helpful right now. It's not helpful right now. There's a time when it will be, but right now, no.
Yeah.
So, and the other thing is you don't know where people are in their grief experience.
Yes. Talk about that. That's important.
I talk about their kind of road signs on this journey from point A to point B, point A being the point of loss, point B being the point of finding peace, choosing an acceptable future. And the road signs are basically, first of all, believe that it happened. And some people live in denial. No, he's going to get up soon. I've heard people say that with their deceased one in the casket. He's just taking a nap. A strange place to take a nap. And so you cannot grieve a loss you do not accept.
Wow.
That's why sometimes divorce is harder for people to grieve because they keep thinking, he when he picked up the kids today, he was nice to me. So who knows? Maybe he's having second thoughts. But if you don't accept the reality of this, you can't move on. And so that's the first signpost, is to believe that it really happened. The second one is to be willing to experience the pain. And here we get into lean into the pain.
Leaning in.
Yeah. There's no way to avoid grief. You can't ignore it. You can't outwork it. You can't outmedicate it. You can't outdrink it. You can't do any of those things. The only way through it is, in fact, through it. And that means you're going to have to hurt. And so be willing to experience that pain and experience it now. The third signpost then is to make adjustments to your daily life without that individual involved in your life. And you can see all these first three, some of them you can do kind of simultaneously, because when my wife died, my cook died. My homemaker, my home decorator died.
Wow.
The mother of my children died. The person I went to Christmas celebrations with. Yeah. You understand all those things. The person I worked with.
The person died. You want to call when something funny happens, all of those kinds of things. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. I had to make adjustments to not having her in my life. I had to figure out how I was going to do food. I learned how to make spaghetti. That's about it. And it wasn't good spaghetti. And then someone said, did you rinse it? Oh, I forgot to rinse it. Oh, yeah. So, in other words, so I'm not good at this. All right. You get the idea?
Yeah.
I'm not good at this. So, but I had to make those adjustments. And it can be something as simple as who takes out the trash now? Who's going to clean the bathroom? That kind of a thing. and as big as how am I going to make it work financially, and how do I get through Christmas without. You make those adjustments, the daily adjustments. And then the fourth signpost is to withdraw the emotional energy you've invested in the relationship, reinvest it elsewhere, and say goodbye to the relationship as it used to be as you choose this acceptable future. Now, you don't withdraw your love, because you'll never do that. That's not healthy. But there's energy and time you've invested in the relationship, and that has defined you. And now you need to reinvest that energy in something new. And it may be in a great cause. It may be in spiritual matters. It may be in your family, your friends, your church. You may eventually, like I've chosen to, reinvest by remarrying. You're not replacing, you're finding something new and different. So you withdraw the emotional energy from one relationship, and now you say, how do I want to spend the rest of my life? What is an acceptable future for me? I've chosen an acceptable future. A wonderful woman who was, she had a weak enough moment that I talked her into leaving Canada, moving to Texas, and spending the rest of her life with me.
Wow.
That was a weak moment, but a God moment for me. That first summer here nearly killed her, by the way. But
I can imagine.
Yeah.
She wasn't sure. She wasn't sure. No.
Yeah.
Is this he that should come, or should we look for another?
Yeah. So, but she has taken it in good humor and great stride, and and also being married to a pastor, a public figure, has been also a difficult thing for her too, because millions of people knew Gail, and so the comparisons are there, and the crazy, unkind, at times stupid comments are being made. You understand?
Yeah.
All those things are going to happen, and she has dealt with that with great grace and dignity. Yeah, she's an amazing woman, and I'm fortunate. I'm blessed. But anyway, that's the last. You don't do the last one until you finish the first three. But that last one, you don't say goodbye and withdraw until you are sure you've exhausted the first three. And once you have, then it's time to say, all right, now where? People talk about, how do I know when I've recovered? You don't recover, but you feel better. When you start to laugh again, that's one of the signs. All right, I might be getting to the point where I can move on, and especially when you can laugh without feeling guilty about it. Then you may be at the point where you can think about moving on. What does that mean? How does that look for me? And it's going to look different for you than it does for me. That's okay. But you come to that point, now it's time to move on.
You were talking a little bit about people not knowing where folks are in their process. I remember when Molly and I lost a child in childbirth, and we were going through our phases of grief, and there were times where I didn't want to answer the phone because today I was feeling all right.
Yeah.
But I know this person is just finding out, and they are now where I was. And so I'm going to spend all of my energy trying to drag you from that spot to where I am. And it's exhausting dealing with folk because they don't know where you are, and they're calling, oh, I'm so sorry. And while that would have been commensurate at one point in time, and it might be even commensurate tomorrow, today, I'm watching something and I've got the giggles and I'm happy, and I feel guilty
about having been happy.
Maybe I should be where, and it's just a hot mess. It really is a hot mess going through.
It is a hot mess. And again, you talk about that experience. I've been on television, but most every week I was in a different church when we were still traveling. So there were people who knew us from TV, did not know us in person, had not had the opportunity to express themselves to me and their sorrow over my loss. And it's been 3 years, 3.5 years, and they're still at stage one, and I've already remarried.
Yes.
And so, that's difficult as well. It kind of drags you back. So not knowing where people are and feeling guilty about lapping or about being where you are, those are big deals. You mentioned also losing a child. And couples who lose a child, you realize that you and Molly have defied the odds, because the divorce rate during the first 18 months is 50 to 75%. And over 5 years is 90 to 95%.
Wow. My goodness.
This is such.
I'm glad I didn't know that.
Yeah. So you have beat the odds. Now this is especially for a child that was born and you know,
Spend some
and
time.
yeah. Now again, to have a stillbirth or a death very close to birth, or that still it increases the divorce rate, because grief has a way of isolating us and making us myopic. All we can see is the pain. And we're going to go through it differently, because she's a mom, you're a dad.
Yeah. Had different relationships, different thought process about the whole thing.
Exactly. Different emotional makeup, different personality, different character. Everything's different between the two. And not to mention the male-female differences. I mean, you put it all together, you grieve differently. And so that makes it more difficult to navigate those experiences, and that's why it puts a lot of stress on marriages.
Yeah, I know. Once again, reaching out to try and help folks that may be in that situation. Just bouncing off of what it is you've told us, the great advice you've given. This may not work for everybody, but I can tell you what the experience was for Molly and I. One of the things that we understood that this is something that could potentially mess us up permanently. We understood that, and we understood the need to talk, the need to communicate where we are with one another. Today, I'm feeling this. Today, I'm angry. I'm angry. Today, I'm feeling guilty. You know, there was various situations of guilt. Did I not do something that would have made this turn better? And then the worst is when you're thinking the other person is saying, did you do something that could have made, you know, did we have a misunderstanding the night before, and the stress of this is it my fault? Is it your fault? And there's all of those things that we were cognizant of, and we recognize we gotta talk about where we are and what, and that's a part of the process. And those were hard to lean into, but God gave us grace because we would lean into and continue to communicate. And I believe sometimes we handled that situation in the earlier part of our marriage a lot better than minor things that might have happened, you know, later on in life. So I am really, really thankful for God and the people that surrounded us during that time frame.
That's good. That's good. Well, it is a huge thing, and the fact that you guys did that so well is a testimony to you, to your support system, and to God help get you through it.
Amen.
So we praise God for that.
Well, Mike, I have gotten, well, this is without saying, I've gotten more than my money's worth.
Well, that's fairly easy to do when you pay me zero, you know what I mean? I'm worth every penny you pay for me, all right? What
can I say? You know, Mike's knocking it out of the park. I've got more than my money's worth in this whole thing. I really want to thank you, and on behalf of the people of God who have yet to hear this conversation, I've been blessed personally, and I am sure, I know without the shadow of a doubt, that this is going to help a lot of people in their area, whether it's coronavirus or afterwards. And
Mhm.
we just want to pray over what it is God's doing in your life,
That's right.
your ministry, and how God is continuing to bless you. You and your ministry is an inspiration to a lot of folks. I know you hear that all the time.
Thank you.
But even for those of us who knew you back when you were a so-so musician and all of those those kinds of things,
Yeah.
it is awesome to see what God has and continues to do through you.
Well,
So
thank you, buddy. May I again throw one shameless plug in? This is a free
Absolutely.
service, and that is
Absolutely.
this Friday night, April 24th, starting at 6:30 Central. We have the grief session starting on the Lifestyle Magazine Facebook page. It will
Awesome.
stream there. You can go there and watch us live. You can ask your questions because part of the process will be answering questions. Thursday, sometime you'll be able to go to a website to download a participation guide, and that is thegriefsessions.com, thegriefsessions.com. And that will be, that webpage is not active yet. It will be on Thursday, and you can download the participation guide there. And that's going to be every Friday night for 6 weeks. And it's a free session to help people understand and navigate the issues of grief.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, the plug has been recorded. Praise the Lord.
You betcha. Good. Got
Thanks
it in whether you
again.
wanted me to or not, didn't I?
There we go. There we go. There we go.
Yeah.
This has been wonderful. And again, we're excited about the information. Thank you. Continue to do what it is God's blessing you to do. And for those of you who are listening in or watching in, we want to thank you for being with us. God bless you. And we'll see you next time on CCH.